Hello everyone and welcome to the first showcase video. I hope you enjoyed the little montage at the beginning. And well, this is the Hurricane. It's a very cool looking airship by Robot Nickman. It's quite expansive. Yeah. So we've already gone over the soft limit of 500 to 1000 for videos, but at the same time, it doesn't have that many things that cause lag, so it runs pretty smoothly, and that's why I call it a soft limit, right? Now, for the review segment, I'm going to start with the cons so we can end on a positive note. That might sound like I'm doing that because I'm going to destroy this thing and I feel bad for it, but without getting ahead of myself, I'm just going to say I was pleasantly surprised by this thing's performance despite the issues it has. So let's dive right in. The first problem with this vehicle is that it's a yes vehicle. What kind of gun does it have? Yes. What kind of shell does it have? Yeah. What kind of missiles does it have? Oh yeah. And that might not seem like a problem, but all those different guns haven't been optimized. And the bottom gun is a prime example of that. So if we look quickly, you can see right there, if you look at the tooltip near the bottom and you look at the RPM values, the autoloader limit is almost 22 RPMs, but the cooling limit is 12. And never mind the ammo intake limit, right? That's debatable in its own right, but that's a lot of discrepancy between the two. And if you have overkill cooling and you lose coolers in fight because of damage, there's a possibility that your gun is still working. But generally speaking, for most APS guns, if you start losing loaders and you don't have ejectors, that's it. The gun just explodes. So having extra autoloaders is just, that's a big no-no. And that just, it makes me really sad because also, if we look at the shells, first of all, you'll see this thing has a lot of shells. It has mixed ammo, and in some cases it makes a bit more sense, but in this case, it really doesn't. So it's loaded with an APHE shell, which it has a pen depth fuse, but it doesn't really have the power to, well, penetrate anything, really. So that already makes me kind of sad because that could be a very powerful gun. This is a 4-meter shell, actually, and like 455 millimeters. That's plenty for a pen depth gun, but it just doesn't. It just doesn't have the stats to perform like one. And then it's also loaded with this hollow point shell, which is also kind of weak, and it really doesn't complement a pen depth gun very well. Pen depth guns are usually fairly specialized weapons in the sense that you can't really, like, there's no ammunition that's gonna have similar stats. You could basically maybe mix in a pen depth shell with another pen depth shell, one that uses frag and one that uses HE. But this kind of combination is just weird, right? Because I don't think that the shells even have the same, they do have the same muzzle velocity, but you can already tell that this muzzle velocity is a bit on the low end for pen depth. It should be at least around 900 meters per second, generally speaking. So that's not a good start. And it's just like, there's so many guns and like all of them almost have mixed shells and they're not really optimized. So that's the first thing. And that brings me to my second point, and that is that I can't overstate how this thing really lacks optimization. It has way more engine power than it needs and way more ammo than it needs. And it's split across only 2 boxes that are actually quite large. It's pretty hard to miss those ammo boxes from the sides. From the front, it's not such a problem, but if they get hit, like, it brings down a lot of the craft. It's actually pretty crazy. If this, I think it's this ammo compartment, if it detonates, it literally creates a hole from the top of the craft down all the way down to the bottom because it chain detonates with the turret. And the same thing like with the back ammo storage, it also explodes along with the AI, so, and along with very expensive RTGs. So really, this vehicle could use, a second pass for optimization. That's just not great. And like the engine power, just to give you an idea, it really doesn't use that much. It has some shields. The laser is actually surprisingly low power. I don't know if I can find a node. Yes, right there. That's not even 2000 power. And if you look at the bottom right on the UI, the engine tab, it's over 60,000 power available. That's really overkill. That's massive overkill because it has also those massive CGs that are that also function as engines. Not to mention the electric engines. It's just way, way, way overkill. And then there's the defenses, which I tackled partially when I mentioned the lambs. Like these lambs, they mostly blind missiles, and that's about it. At 1600 power, it's just not gonna do very much. And then there's the smoke, which is really token. This is the only place where there's smoke across the entire vehicle. Like if we go around, you can see those are weapon controllers. There's little plates. That's about it. All of the smoke on this vehicle is on these struts, and it's at the minimum setting. That's just, it's not gonna do anything. In fact, the cloud is supposedly about 20 meters. It's gonna protect the pods for most part, but this thing is a front-sider. So yeah, well, you have that smoke, but even then, if you get shot straight down the middle, it's gonna take a lot of laser damage. From the sides, it's gonna take a lot of laser damage. And at the minimum settings, it's really not enough to lower the AP for the things that are around its cost bracket, right? This thing is expensive. If you're fighting such expensive laser vehicles, that amount of laser defense is just not enough. There's very little missile defenses. There's this gun, which is actually a Sea-Wiz, but it's situated on the top. And this thing is not really equipped to deal with vehicles that attack it at the same height or from above even. It's more something that would attack ships because all of the armament is actually underneath and kind of on the sides but blocked by the pods. So yeah, the CIWS, the Sea-Wiz, is just not great. It helps, don't get me wrong. It's a nice attempt, but it's just not enough. And it has these missile decoys, which, it's better than nothing, but it's really, for such an expensive craft, which doesn't necessarily have overwhelming firepower, it's not going to take out targets super quick. It has sustained damage, very nice sustained damage, but yeah, I don't find that the defense is really enough. Not to mention the armor, right? Because the armor is also kind of cardboard. Well, actually, I shouldn't do that. If we look closely, this is a mix of alloy and metal, and it's really not that thick. There's no heavy armor. It's just mostly single or 2 layers of alloy, sometimes mixed in with some metal, and there's even like plates on the inside, which doesn't do very much. It's mostly, I guess, for visuals. It's really thin. It's really thin. It's uncomfortably thin. And now for the positives. This thing has a lot of redundancy. It might come as a bit of a surprise after what I've said earlier. And, my first reaction when I loaded it in the first time was just, wow, those big deadly pods are just going to get shot up. And they do get shot, but it doesn't actually need them to stay airborne or stable. So it's actually quite difficult to cripple in a 1v1. From the sides, standard front-sider weakness, But in a 1v1, it's really quite tough. It might lose a bit of altitude, but it takes a lot to stop it from moving or to send it into water. In a similar vein, the armor might be cardboard, but there's so much cardboard and empty space that it's actually incredibly survivable. Like from the front here all the way to, well, this Seawiz can actually get shot, but it's not a big explosion since they are kinetic rounds. And then all the way to the first ammo store, there's just so much space and so many layers of, well, applique, plates, alloy, metal, everything. There's just so much in the way that it doesn't actually get severely damaged very quickly, despite the armor being relatively weak. And finally, a special mention that this thing actually has no repair bots, and it's still able to compete. I don't like spamming repair bots, but I always use a few myself still, because it's pretty useful in just, repairing a few, if you get a grazing hit and something important gets destroyed, well, it can get repaired. This thing has zero, none, zip, zilch. It's exactly like a campaign vehicle. And that's a pretty ballsy move, if you ask me. It's surprisingly good for all of the little details that I could nitpick about this thing. And that's it for the Hurricane. So thank you, Robot Nickman, for sending in this blueprint. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video, leave a comment, and consider sending in your own blueprints for a showcase or for funky fixes. You can contact me on Discord or send it in at om.ftd@gmail.com. Thank you for watching. Bye bye.